Hey, what's up, fam? Coach James here, co-owner and facility leader of Rancho Cordova Fit Body Boot Camp, and I'm coming to you with a video on how to turn this chest freezer into an ice bath. So a few of you have asked me to create a tutorial video showing you how to make this conversion. I've watched a few videos along the way so that I make sure that I cover all the bases, and so you'll be able to follow along with me as I do the conversion itself. Of course, there'll be spots that it will be sped up, so you're not having to sit through that process. But I will be going over this tutorial with you, and I'll go over some of the material that I needed to purchase in order to create this ice bath. All right, so stay tuned, and I'll be back with you soon. So as you guys can see here, this is a 20 cubic foot ice freezer made by GE. I purchased it at Home Depot, and I personally got it because I like larger ice baths, because I have some friends that are bigger than I am that I would like to invite into the actual fridge itself. So that's why I decided to make that purchase. So as you can see here, this is pretty roomy. I've already unpacked the freezer itself, and it came totally boxed up. Took a lot of work. And then inside some of these newer freezers are these rails here, and they house or they hold up baskets. And so that you can compartmentalize your freezer. So you'll see there's tracks on each side of this chest freezer. So I think some of the older ones don't have these, and so that might be something to consider, is purchasing a used chest freezer. But as one of the newer ones, this is a great benefit for an actual chest freezer. Not such a great benefit if you're trying to turn it into an ice bath. All right, so with these rails, it's pretty simple to pop them off. You just kind of pull up on them. Boom, and then going down the line, boom, and then you'll pull out the actual rail. Now, if you look a little closely, these little holders here, they're like little buttons. They protrude out. There you go. And then there is some openings there. So one of the things that need to happen is we're gonna look for these seams, like down here at the bottom of the chest freezer here, and then all the way up this step end here around there. So all those seams there, where there is any sort of separation, is going to require that we seal them up with some silicone. So that's going to be actually your first step, is that you're going to grab the silicone, and you're going to use that to seal all of those edges and anything where it could look like water could get inside. In addition, you're going to see that these have drain plugs. Most chest freezers have drain plugs down here at the bottom, and so that the edges here are going to have to be sealed up. And I like to pull the drain plug out. It's been recommended that if there's no rubber seal, you can't see that. So as you can see here, there's no rubber seal there, that we actually seal up the actual plug itself, and just find another mean or break that seal every time you want to clean the tub out. So as you can see here, I've got all both rails out. There's a few of these little plastic supports here that need to be kind of shaved off and then sealed. So I've got this handy Dremel tool here, and it spins, and it's just going to allow me to kind of shave those pieces off. I'm not looking for any sort of perfection per se, but I'm just trying to shave those pieces off so that they're not protruding out of the side of the fridge, and then I can seal up as much as I can with the actual silicone sealant. So I'm gonna go and start kind of shaving a few of these pieces off. right, so all the supports, the little plastic supports, those have all been cut off. Now I'm gonna move on to sealing the actual tub itself. All right, so first part of the project is done. We've got everything sealed up that we can see. And we've gone through and we've sealed any open spaces that we could foresee with that marine grade silicone sealant. So you'll see all underneath. We just want to make sure that we're not allowing any water to get through the cracks into the circuits of the actual freezer, because that probably wouldn't work out very well. And so that's the whole point of sealing up all of those cracks. And then that way it's a nice watertight seal. And that's also why we choose the marine grade silicone. So now what we need to do is we got to wait about 24 hours for it to cure and dry. And then the next steps, we'll get into filling up with some water, throwing some ice in that puppy to begin that process. And then how we can hook it up so that we can keep it disinfected. But then also how we can set the timer so that the water stays cold, but it doesn't freeze over into a big giant ice block. All right, so be back soon. All right, so there are a few items that I needed in order to complete this ice bath build. And I'm going to go through each of these items and kind of let you know exactly what I'm gonna be using them for in the process. So the first and foremost piece, and probably, well, one of the most important pieces, as all of these are important to a certain extent, but this is critical, is this marine sealant, marine approved silicone sealant. That is what we are going to use in order to seal up the cracks and other areas where water can enter inside of the unit. We don't want that to happen, of course, to ensure that the unit continues to work for a long period of time. So electronics can't get wet, pretty straightforward, right? Now, to dispense this silicone, if you decide to get this option, which I felt was the best, I only needed one of these tubes, is this smooth rod caulk gun. So, caulk is another form of like a sealant, okay? So anyways, you're gonna use this smooth rod caulk gun, and you're gonna use that in conjunction with the silicone to dispense the silicone and seal up all of the cracks. Then this is a 3-foot GFCI extension cord. So using this to plug the freezer into the actual wall, so that if there is some sort of a power surge of some sort, then this will cut off that electrical flow and in turn protect the freezer itself. This is a timer. So this is my touch smart timer, and it's a digital timer that allows me to decide how long I want the freezer to run, because I'm not going to want it to run continuously, because if it does that, then eventually that water is going to turn into an ice block, rendering the actual ice tub useless. This is a submersible water pump used for aquariums. So we want something that we can put in there just to keep the water moving. So this is one way that we are going to try to keep the water as clean as we possibly can when it's not in use, so that we don't need to always be emptying out the tub and refilling it with fresh water, which is part of the problem. So Moving the water around, make sure that the water does not stay stagnant, and then in turn will keep the water as clean as possible. Now, in conjunction with the water pump, I've purchased some Epsom salt that we will use, and then also some food grade hydrogen peroxide. So I've been looking for different ways to figure out how we are going to keep the water as clean as possible so we do not have to always be cleaning the water. And so through all of my research, I've found that keeping the water moving is step number one. Step number two is finding some sort of agent that's going to keep the water clean. And hydrogen peroxide was an option. And then a lot of people are using ozone generators. Unfortunately, I live in the beautiful state of California, and in California, they've determined that ozone generators are not okay to clean air. That's usually what they're used for, is to disinfect air. But they found that that was not safe. We can't get ozone generators shipped to California, so I had to find a different option. So that's led me to Epsom salt and hydrogen peroxide and a submersible water pump that will help to keep the water moving while it is not in use. All right, so we're gonna move on and show you how we combine all of these items in order to make you the ice tub that you are wanting to create. All right, so I'm back. It's been a little over 24 hours since I sealed all the seams with the silicone. I've allowed it to dry or cure so that everything can be kosher. And so today we get to fill the tub with some water, and I've got a couple bags of ice. I've actually got another bag in the other freezer that we will use to help kind of speed the process of chilling the water up. All right, so stay tuned as we start to fill the tub. So obviously this process is going to take a while, so stay tuned, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, so I'm back. It's almost full. So I'm periodically going into the tub just to measure to make sure it'll cover up to my neck. I don't want to overfill it, but I also don't want it to be underfilled. Stay tuned. It's getting there. It's getting real close, and I'll update you soon. All right, so now what I'm doing is I'm putting inside putting the water pump inside. This is gonna help to keep the water circulating through the process when I'm not in the tub, and that way the water doesn't get stagnant and it's always kind of moving along. So I just plug it in, and then I'm just gonna stick it down into the tub itself. And then boom, it just provides some water circulation when the tub is not in use. And the whole goal is just to try to keep it to where we're not having to turn around and replace the water too often, and keep the water clean. So, all right, so I'm back, and we've got the water running. The next step up is to set up the timing mechanism to determine when we're going to have the freezer turn on and when we're going to have the freezer turn off. You don't want the freezer to constantly run, aside from maybe when you're first cooling your water, because that may take some time. Although I put in a few bags of ice in there to try to help speed that process along. But after that initial cooling process, to maintain the temperature in the tub, you're probably only going to need to run the freezer for maybe an hour or two a day. And that's just going to be determined based off of your geographical location and what the temperature's like in your area. So in this particular case, I've purchased this timer and also the GFCI extension there. That GFCI extension is designed to cut off power supply in the event of a power surge so that the freezer does not get damaged in that particular case. I also have this timer here, My Touch Smart Timer, that is plugged into that GFCI as well. And then the timer is then plugged into the actual freezer itself. So now when you're actually using the freezer itself, it is extremely important that you know, and everybody else in your household that may be using the freezer knows, that it must be unplugged. You want to unplug the freezer before you actually get inside. I would also take out the water pump as well, just to be safe, okay? There's no guarantee that you would get electrocuted, but why take the chance if you don't need to? So with that being said, this timing mechanism that I've got down here, that's going to ensure that my freezer isn't always on and that I don't get a big block of ice in my freezer that then I have to then go chip away, which is going to suck. So anyways, that is how we finish up the setup of the timer. And then and the instructions are in the actual timer itself, so I'm not going to bore you with the details on how to set that up. All right, so the last step in the creation of the ice bath is to ensure that you have something to keep the water as clean as possible. I did a ton of research, and here in California, we can't get ozone generators, which a lot of ice baths are using that, or ice bath makers are using that in order to keep the water clean. So in our particular case, what I found was the best option was to use a mixture of hydrogen peroxide. So I ended up purchasing 12% hydrogen peroxide, which I won't bore you details, was a lot stronger than I needed it to be. And so I had to then dilute it down into a 3% mixture. And then that can be used to purify water. You can even make it into drinking water, which is not necessarily what we need it to be used for, because I don't plan on drinking that water. And so if you happen to get 12% on accident, you can take 1 part of the hydrogen peroxide, 3 parts water, and that will create a 3% hydrogen peroxide solution, which you can then add in. So what I ended up doing was I just estimated it's a 20 cubic foot ice chest. I convert that into gallons. It's about 150 gallons. I roughly say it's about half full. It is just an estimate. And so I needed 150, so 2 milliliters per gallon. So 150 milliliters of 3% hydrogen peroxide in order to keep the water disinfected. So that's what I added in there. I'm not going to bore you with seeing me pour hydrogen peroxide into the chest freezer. All right, so I'm back. The ice tub is done. As you can see here, maybe you can't see it. It's about 59 degrees in the tub. So a few things that I've learned. It does take a bit for the tub to cool down. I think it all depends on your temperature, the season that you're, starting this. So I'm in Sacramento. It's high 90s, low hundreds during the summer. And so I ran it initially for 6 hours to see how cold it would get. It just got down somewhere around like the high 60s. I ran it for another 6 hours. It got down into around 60. And I ended up having to run it for another 10 hours for it to get down to, say hi, Mace, for it to get down to around 55 degrees. So this happened over a course of like 2 or 3 days. I realized that I was running it for an hour per night. It wasn't long enough. I've upped it to an hour and 45 minutes. I might have to up it a little bit more to maybe like 3 hours, at least for the summertime here in Sacramento. So that's just kind of a feeling out process. But I got down to about 55 degrees. I'm going to hop in this puppy, just sit in it for a little bit and yeah, enjoy myself. So I'll sit in for about 4 minutes usually, just as a place to start. And then, you know, you can always up your tolerance level from there. Of course, if this is the first time you're ever doing it, then I'm thinking like maybe try to sit in it for 30 seconds to a minute first. And then, you know, you can do these intervals, building yourself back up, maybe go out for a minute, go sit for another minute or a minute and a half, and just try to slowly increase your time. But it's a feeling out process for you. Don't get discouraged if you can't sit in it for a long period of time in the beginning. You will build up the tolerance level for it, and it's going to be great for your body long term. All right. So I'll be back soon. All right. So I'm going to get in this puppy. I bought a nice inexpensive stool from Home Depot just to make it a little safer to step into the actual tub. I also keep my hose over here. I gotta find a better way, but I try to keep my feet nice and clean if I've been stepping outside. And then that way, whenever I get into the tub water stays as clean as possible. So you'll kind of see this recurring theme. So I'm gonna get in this puppy. My watch. All right, so that's it. That's a little over 4 minutes. You'll see that I also like the space of the tub because I like to be able to put my head into the tank. It's a little bit easier when you have a little bit more room. Before I actually get into the tub, I usually do go through some breathing techniques. You can look up Wim Hof, W-I-M-H-O-F. There's some great breathing techniques to help with being able to withstand the stresses of cold, or I mean really the stresses of life. So take a look at that, and then and just work your way up to being able to stay in the tub. So don't try to sit for a long period of time all at once. Just build yourself up. A minute here, 30, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and just build up that tolerance. I promise you that your tolerance will increase. All right. I think that's it. So hope you enjoy your tub, and comment below if you have some questions.